They thought nobody knew. The night was quiet, too quiet. Somewhere between the hills of Amanko and the river bend of Umoa, something unholy was happening. But it wasn't just the chant or the strange fire that burned without wood, it was what happened after. Chokuma was not supposed to die. He was respected. A good man on the surface. A family man. He was coming back from the meeting, what they called Ogbo, but the villagers knew better. That Ogbo was no ordinary gathering. It was a coven. A gathering of men who had made pacts in the night to hold wealth, power, and fear. And last night, something went wrong. By morning, his body was found, twisted and frozen like he had seen something from beyond the grave. His tongue was missing. His eyes wide open. The bike he rode was still running, light on, standing upright. This is the true story of what really happened the night Chokuma died. The secrets he kept. The oaths he took. And why the dead now speak in hushed whispers about the man who never made it home. The night air in Umoa carried a chill that didn't belong to July. It was one of those nights where even the crickets kept quiet, like the earth itself was waiting. Inside the small, mud-walled room at the back of his compound, Chokuma sat cross-legged, staring at the time on his phone. 1:07 a.m. He wasn't sleeping. He was waiting. A knock tapped the window, 3 short, then 1 long. That was the sign. The others had arrived. He stood, careful not to wake his wife, Ifeoma, who was curled up on the mat with their 2 daughters. Quietly, he pushed open the creaky door and stepped into the darkness. He didn't need a torchlight. He knew the path. Behind his house was a small yam barn, then the bush path that led toward Ikininka Shrine, the abandoned ground where old gods once reigned. That was their meeting place, the place the coven had claimed for over 15 years now. Chokuma was not always like this. There was a time he was just a struggling trader in Nko Market. That was before he met Dyke, the man who changed his life. Dyke was a former lorry driver who became a silent millionaire overnight. People said he invested in palm oil. But those who saw what he did at night, those who heard the drums in the hills at ungodly hours, knew better. It was Dyke who brought Chokuma in. It started with a just come and see. Then a just come and greet. Then before he knew it, Chokuma had poured libation, taken blood oath, and licked the ash from the skull of a vulture, swearing silence, loyalty, and obedience. And in return, his fortunes turned overnight. His petty shop became 2 stores. His name rang loud at community meetings. Politicians shook his hand and called him chief. But nothing comes free in that world. The oaths don't forget. Last night, something went wrong. As Chokuma got to the clearing, 6 men were already there, dressed in black, barefoot, sitting in a circle. A fire burned in the center, no wood, no smoke. Just fire. Dyke was not there. Neither was the High One, the priest who usually led the rites. Chokuma frowned. Where is Ogoranya? The man beside him, Ndubizi, looked uneasy. He said not to come tonight. Said the spirits were angry. But Dyke insisted we meet. Chokuma's heart beat faster. Why would we gather if the High One forbids it? Ndubizi leaned closer. Because someone broke the oath. One of us spilled blood without permission. The spirits are seeking balance. Chokuma felt his throat go dry. That was a serious offense. Each man carried secrets, deals made with spirits of the forest, sacrifices offered at night, and names written in books that the living don't see. Breaking the order of sacrifice brought consequences, terrible ones. They began the rite. A small bowl was passed around. Each man took a sip of the black liquid, bitter, smoky, burning. Then the chant began. Oji Oji Enudo. Enkpurumiri Nk Mio. Nwe Obi Enoho, Nai Oni Yuzo. Chokuma closed his eyes as he chanted, but something was wrong. The wind began to howl, and the flames in the center of the circle bent sideways, then died suddenly. Then, darkness. And then, a scream. Not from any man there. Not human. A cry that came from the trees. Long shrieking. Echoing. Like a woman giving birth to death itself. One of the men, Okori, stood up and shouted, "Run! Run!" They broke the circle. They scattered into the bush. Chokuma ran. He didn't look back. He didn't try to check who was following. He just ran. He got to the path near the Catholic church. His motorbike was parked where he left it, hidden under dry plantain leaves. Hands trembling, he started the engine. His mind raced as he sped through the narrow bush road. The trees were moving unnaturally, like they were closing in on him. His eyes saw shadows that didn't belong to living things. But he didn't stop. He was 5 minutes from home when it happened. The bike jolted. He saw a figure in the middle of the road. White. Tall. No face. He swerved. The bike flipped. He landed hard. As he opened his eyes, he saw it, right above him. The thing. No mouth, no eyes. But it was speaking inside his head. "You broke the oath." That was the last thing Chokuma saw before his soul left his body. By morning, the village was on fire with rumors. "Have you heard? Chokuma is dead. Found near the junction. Eyes open. Tongue gone." Yet his bike was standing as if nothing happened. Ifeoma wailed like a madwoman. His daughters cried without understanding what it meant. But the elders knew. They didn't say much, but they knew. And by evening, Dyke's house was empty. Fled. Gone. Nobody ever saw him again. But at night, people near the old shrine say they still hear the chant. And sometimes, if you pass that way after midnight, you'll see a bike standing by itself, lights still on. Waiting. Waiting for the next one to break the oath. The village elders gathered that evening in silence. The kind of silence that wrapped itself around grief and fear like the leaves of an unripe palm fruit. Chief Omif, the oldest man in Umua, stared at the burning firewood in the center of the Obi and finally spoke. "He died the death of covenant," he muttered, voice deep and heavy. But he was warned. A few elders nodded. Others shifted uncomfortably. No one wanted to say it outright. Nobody wanted to be the one to accuse the dead. Not yet. But it was true. 3 weeks before Chokuma died, a stranger had come to Umua. He was tall, barefoot, and wrapped in a faded white cloth like a prophet from the book. He came through the hill path, holding a carved walking stick and wearing a chain of cowrie shells around his neck. His eyes were red, not from drugs, but from deep seeing. People said he walked into St. Michael's Church and dropped face down on the altar, weeping for someone he had never met. His name was Ugochukwu, and the priest, Father Dominic, had written it down in his parish log as prophet, possibly unstable. Preaches doom. needs deliverance. But the man was not mad. He had come with a message. And it was for Chokuma. I saw him in a dream, Ugochukwu told Father Dominic. His hands were red, but not with blood of war. It was the blood of broken order. He rides with death behind him, and the road will not take him home. Father Dominic shook his head, disturbed but skeptical. Are you saying someone will die in this village? Ugochukwu stood up and shouted with the force of thunder, he has already died. The spirit is merely waiting for the body to obey. The next day, Ugochukwu walked through the market, asking for a man named Chokuma. He was turned away, mocked, even stoned by children. He's mad. Mad prophet, they shouted, laughing. But one woman didn't laugh. Mama Njidika, the herb seller who lived near the bush path, stared long and hard at the prophet as he passed. She had seen men like him before. Men who lived between realms. And she knew when a soul was carrying the weight of truth. That night, she went to Chokuma's compound. She found him sitting under the pawpaw tree, sipping palm wine. Brother Chokuma, she said softly, you should not go to your meeting tonight. The wind smells like grave salt. He looked at her, confused, then suspicious. Which wind? She didn't answer. Just placed 3 kola nuts on the floor and whispered. Ask the gods to choose life. He laughed, thinking she was being dramatic. Mama, I am fine. Everything is well. She stared at him again. The gods don't lie. They only wait. 3 days later, the whole village was gathered in front of Chokuma's house, watching as the body was lowered into the ground with eyes wide open. His widow, Ifioma, had not spoken since morning. Her eyes were dry now. But her silence was heavier than her screams had been. That evening, as the last mourners left, Ugochukwu returned. This time, nobody mocked him. He knelt by the grave, drew strange symbols on the sand, and lit a white candle. As the flame rose, a wind blew through the compound. Cold. Dry. And then he spoke. He was warned. But when power blinds, even thunder sounds like rain. Then he looked up and said something that made the hairs on the necks of the villagers rise. This is not the last. That night, 2 things happened that confirmed the fear everyone carried in their hearts. The first was the appearance of a dead fowl, headless, on the doorstep of Nubizi, one of the cover members. The blood was fresh. The fowl still warm. The second was the scream. Around 3:12 a.m., a piercing cry echoed from the hills, the same path leading to the old shrine. It didn't stop for nearly 5 minutes. Some said it was a woman. Others swore it sounded like a man being burned alive. By morning, Ndubizi had vanished. His compound was empty. No signs of struggle. Just an open gate and his wrapper folded neatly on the doorstep. No one spoke of it. But the message was clear, the spirits had begun to collect. Days passed. Then weeks. But the fear lingered like harmattan dust. People avoided the bush path. The young men who used to go drinking at night now stayed home. Even the masquerade festival was postponed, for the first time in 70 years. But evil doesn't go away. It only shifts. One Tuesday morning, around 6:45 a.m., a farmer named Obidike was returning from his cassava farm when he saw a goat standing in the middle of the road. Nothing unusual, except that this goat had no shadow. Obidike stood, frozen. Then he did something unusual, he greeted it. No. The goat stared, then turned, and walked into the bush, disappearing without a sound. By that afternoon, news reached the village that Okri, another member of the coven, had been found. Not dead, but mad. He was naked, crawling near the village stream, laughing and screaming. She came in white. Her eyes were rivers. She drank my name. I saw my death chewing cassava. They tried to hold him down. The youth tied his hands and brought him to the health center, but no injection could calm him. That night, he disappeared again. Some say they saw him walking into the forest, still laughing. Others said a white vulture flew above his head, leading him. No one ever saw him again. By now, the village was unraveling. Children were not allowed out after sunset. The youth leader ordered all-night movement to stop. But fear is like water, you can cover it with a basket, but it will still seep out. Father Dominic called a town prayer crusade. He begged the villagers, let us renounce evil. Let us reject covens and pacts. But not everyone was clapping. Because hidden in the back row, among the Amen and Hallelujah, were two men whose eyes never blinked during the prayers. Their lips moved, but not in English or Igbo. They were still loyal to the covenant. And the spirits knew them. That night, one of them, Izugo, was visited. He woke up to find his bed wet with blood. No wound on his body. No cut. But the mattress soaked. On his wall, written in charcoal, were the words, "You washed and said nothing." Izugo fled the village that morning. They say he left behind everything, wife, children, land. Nobody heard from him again. And the spirits, they didn't stop there. They wanted the last man.